Aloha, good afternoon, everyone. It is 2:34 p.m. on Wednesday, January 15, 2025, and I call the special meeting of the Committee on Housing, Sustainability, Economy, and Health to order. Would like to welcome Vice Chair Cordero, Councilmember Tolba, I believe Councilmember Dos Santos Tam is on his way, as well as Councilmember Tupola. Mahalo. Pursuant to the Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-3.7, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in person in the council chamber and remotely when each agenda item is taken up. Before testifying, each person shall state their name for the record and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. As both English and Hawaiian are official languages of the state of Hawaii, pursuant to Article 15, Section 4 of the Hawaii State Constitution and Sections 1-13 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes, members of the public may testify in either language. For oral testimonies offered in Olelo, Hawaii, additional time may be necessary will be allowed for the testifier to provide an English translation of their testimony if they so wish. All persons who have registered to testify in person will be called upon first. When your name is called, please come up to the testifier podium. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to testify following the registered testifiers. After in-person testimony has concluded, I will proceed to remote testimony via video conference or phone. When I call your name, please monitor your screen and follow the prompt to unmute. For those who are joining us by telephone only, please press *9 if you wish to testify, and I will immediately identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Please listen for the prompt to unmute and press *6. Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-3.7 requires that all votes at a remote meeting be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off and silence all cell phones for the duration of the meeting. So members, that brings us to agenda item today, informational briefing. That's the only item on our agenda today, and it's update by the Office of Housing on the city's housing plan. Please note that we distributed a copy of the Mayor's Office of Housing presentation to all of you. For your information, it's available online as Mayor's Message 4. We have Executive Director Kevin Auger for the Office of Housing along with his staff present today. Yeah, it says 4. Oh, okay. So Mayor's Message 5, my apologies. So just to clarify, that's the distributed presentation for everyone. Okay, we'll go ahead and turn it over to the director and your team, however you want to proceed. I know we have the PowerPoint, I think, up already on the computer, and just want to mahalo you for being here today.
Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon, Housing Chair Wire, Vice Chair Cordero, and Councilmember Tolba. My name is Kevin Auger. I'm the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Housing, and thank you for the opportunity today to present this update to the city's housing plan. During the second half of 2024, the Office of Housing engaged Community Scale and Apt Global, assisted by Kevin Carney in Affordable Housing Solutions, to assist the office in producing a comprehensive housing plan for the city. We're grateful for the work of Community Scale and the Apt Global team, and also for the efforts of the office housing staff, the Housing Chair Wire, and your staff, and for the collaborative efforts of the various stakeholders who provided their input and expertise in developing the plan. The plan builds on previous reports developed by the Office of Housing in 2023 and 2024, and it's been informed by the primary urban center plan developed by the Department of Planning and Permitting. The first section of the plan describes obstacles and barriers to the development of housing and their impacts to our residents on Oahu. And these include a $1.1 million median home price, median rents approaching $2,000, high costs of construction, and limited land availability for multifamily development, regulatory barriers and permitting challenges, More than half of all renters are rent burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on rent and home ownership that became increasingly out of reach, and the thousands of middle-class residents leaving our island each year due to the high costs of living and housing. The plan also includes an extensive appendix section that provides compelling socioeconomic data and demographic analysis that provides important insights for our continuing work related to housing policy. To the extent that much of this information has been well documented in previous reports and studies, today's briefing will be focused on the section of the plan, which describes the strategic housing priorities and the specific actionable and measurable steps the city will be undertaking to create and develop and deliver affordable housing. The most important of these are driving transit-oriented development, activating the Quilly Station redevelopment area, partnering to expand housing production, engineering creative financing solutions to expand housing supply, reorganizing the city's housing functions to support and drive execution, and other policy processes and improvements. Just to note that the final draft of the plan has been shared with several city department directors and their staffs for final review and comment. And once their comments are received and reviewed, they'll be included in the final version, which we anticipate publishing by January 31st. Transit-oriented development. Skyline is now reality. The first segment's been activated. The second act is scheduled to be activated by the end of 2025. And the third segment's been awarded. The bid has been awarded to Tutor Perini for approximately $1.6 billion. Driving future development towards TOD areas along the rail is a central component of the city's primary urban center plan. Transit-oriented development allows us to concentrate growth and density in the primary urban center without encroaching on rural areas. It supports the creation of mixed-use corridors along the rail that integrate housing, office, retail, entertainment, and government and educational uses. These compact communities encourage multimodal transportation options, which in turn reduce commute times, greenhouse gas emissions, and household transportation costs, which are the second highest household cost for Oahu residents. The city's been developing neighborhood TOD plans over the last decade. These plans have been subject to robust community engagement process, and they've been approved by the City Council. To advance these plans, the administration worked with the state legislature last year to pass Act 45, which grants counties the same powers as the HHFDC to develop mixed-use developments. With the commencement of rail operations, the administration is now aggressively moving to activate TOD areas with an immediate focus on the Quilly Station area in Iwilei. The Quilly Station area is bounded by Dillingham Boulevard, South King, Iwilei Road, and Quilly Street. You can hit that. Is that going? We've got a video presentation, but it's taken a moment to buffer. There it goes.
While it does that, I'll just also recognize Councilmember Dos Santos, Tam, and Chamber Mahalo. The total area of the Iwilei Quilly Station redevelopment area is approximately 20 acres. It's an obsolete plat with limited accessibility, and it's been primarily an industrial area over the last 100 years with known pockets of environmental contamination. It may be susceptible to flood, requiring mitigation measures, which could potentially be further exacerbated by sea level rise over the coming decades. Significant state and city land holdings in this area create a unique opportunity to address these concerns with coordinated government support and potential federal funding. More importantly, redevelopment of this area creates an opportunity to develop a world-class mixed-use district with thousands of housing units in a prime location directly next to downtown in the central urban core. In December of 2023, the city acquired the First Hawaiian Bank branch on South King Street. In January in 2024, the city acquired the Iwilei Center property, which is approximately 3.9 acres. When we combine those land holdings with additional lands that the city currently owns, the city currently controls around 42% of this overall area.
When we combine that with the state land owning, which is the Lily House Civic Center site, which is the green area in your slides, the total government control of the area is approximately 75%. That really gives us a unique opportunity. That state-city nexus really gives us a unique opportunity for redevelopment. So to begin evaluating the area's potential, the city partnered with the Center for Creative Land Recycling, or CCLARE. CCLARE is a nonprofit organization that works with communities nationwide to promote the sustainable, equitable, and responsible reuse of underutilized environmentally impacted properties. CCLARE is the technical assistance advisor for the EPA and has assisted hundreds of communities across the country securing millions of dollars in EPA grants and other state and federal funding. When we first contacted CCLARE, we were in discussions with them about assisting us with brownfields mitigation. But we discovered through our conversations and dialogue that CCLARE could do so much more for us, particularly helping us to understand the potential of the site with modeling. So the first thing that we asked them to do is take a look at the area and, based on the existing zoning, model for us what could be developed on the site. The second thing that we asked them to do was to take a look at the existing land parcels and, using TOD zoning, what would the density look like? And then we took that density and established a more elegant master plan, if you will, to understand what that could potentially look like and what the connectivity we could create would look like. So the ultimate model indicated that we could create, if you can see the model on the screen, really an opportunity to deliver a catalytic and transformative TOD development that could conservatively support 1,500 to 2,000 housing units. All of that's within walking distance of the downtown district, where residents can live, work, and play, creating a decreasing dependency on automobiles and the cost to maintain them. To lay the groundwork for the master planning in the area, the city worked with CCLARE to facilitate a planning workshop for state and city officials during August last year. We convened representatives from all key state agencies and city departments, allowing them to develop a shared understanding of the redevelopment potential of the area. Their insights and contributions were summarized in the situation report by CCLARE. That report provides a roadmap for coordinating and executing comprehensive master planning that will be undertaken later this year. Two important factors to note about this work. First, CCLARE's work was provided courtesy of the EPA. There was no cost to the city. And the ability to develop these models put us light years ahead of where we would have been otherwise. And that was really important for a couple of reasons, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Second, this work has been and continues to be a highly collaborative effort internally among city departments and externally working together with state partners, and we're grateful for their continued efforts and support. When we looked at the opportunity, CCLARE kind of hunted around to see if there were any precedents that were equivalent to the development potential of the site in the United States. And unfortunately, they couldn't find any. The closest examples that they could find were the Brentwood Town Center in Vancouver, British Columbia, and the Shiodome Station area in Tokyo, Japan. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity. Additionally, is that the workshop slide? I think we ran ahead. There you go. Two things that came out of this work that was provided to us for free. The first was we applied for a state CIP planning grant of $200,000. And the state provided us with a grant of $700,000 because A, they were inspired by the work, and B, they wanted us to work with the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization to co-locate a multimodal hub in the redevelopment area. So that grant is live. We're currently signing the paperwork. So we've been funded with $700,000 more to move forward. More importantly, during July last year, in a really collaborative effort that was supported by the Ulupono Initiative, we worked with our state partners to apply for an FTA CIP planning grant of $2 million. We were awarded that grant in late October this year. It was the highest of 10 grants awarded out of a total of $10 million and 30 applications. The grant will cover additional planning work in three distinct areas. One is planning for connectivity in the Kapolama Iwilei area. There were two reports that were done in 2021 and 2020 by SSFM and Fear and Peers, I believe, and they provided great recommendations for additional connectivity in that area, which is sort of defined by Superblocks, Costco, Home Depot, et cetera. And the second thing it'll help us look at is infrastructure capacity for that area. But before we can align the infrastructure, we've got to align the streets. So hand in hand, those two things will be really helpful to us. It'll also give us an opportunity to coordinate an infrastructure ask with the state ledge and city council so we can work together to provide the necessary infrastructure for the place. The third thing it will provide is master planning money in addition to the CIP money that we received from the state. So in total, we've got $2.7 million for planning efforts in the area, and all of that was provided as a result of the planning that we did with CCLAR. So when we look at our progress on the site, we closed on the First Hawaiian Bank branch in December 2023. We closed on the Evilay Center in January 2024. In March of 23, we worked with the mayor and got the green light to acquire additional properties in this area. In April 2024, we were introduced to CCLAR. We signed an MOU with CCLAR in May of 2024. In July of 24, we applied for the FTA TOD grant. And in August of 24, we conducted the workshop with state and city partners. In September of 24, I'm gonna have to, I can't see very well. The city applied for an OPSD grant, which we were awarded. We've partnered with OMPO for the co-location of a multimodal hub. We've had conversations with the Trust for Public Land about including Ala Park into the overall project area. We met with the School of Ocean and Earth Sciences at UH and briefed them on the project so we could understand sea level rise. We've been working with One Water, HART, the Board of Water Supply, ENV, DPP, and DFM to begin assessing infrastructure needs for the area. And then in October, HART agreed to reorient the Cooley rail station so that it focuses in on the Evilay Center site. And they also agreed to provide us with 2 stub outs at the elevated guide rail level, one of which will provide pedestrian access directly into the Evilay Center building. I think that's pretty good. So going forward, we'll be issuing an RFQ for Evilay Center Development Partner January 25 at the end of the month. We're initiating additional land acquisitions in the first quarter of 2025. We hope to secure a partner for the Evilay Center development in Q2, Q3 2025. We'll be pursuing the redevelopment area master planning in a coordinated and parallel effort. We'll be issuing an RFP for the procurement of design, planning, and technical consultants in the second quarter of 2025. We hope to complete the master planning sometime in 26. We hope to complete the EIS and NEPA requirements, historical preservation requirements by 27, and hopefully completing entitlements for the area and permitting for the Evilay Center redevelopment by 2028 and groundbreaking on the first phase of the redevelopment of the Evilay Center in 2028. The second important thing that we'll be doing is partnering to expand housing production, working with the local development community. That's going to be a central component of our strategy to deliver additional housing. One of the coveted assets the city brings to the table is the use of public lands for housing development. We've had some success in the past with several projects, including Hale Vaiolu, Verona Village, Kalaheo Elementary School site, Hale Waliko, Kalaimau, Parkway Villages at Kapolei, and Kiapai Place. Go to the next slide. But when we look at the timeline from the issuance of RFPs to the time that we actually executed ground lease and development contracts for these projects, on average, it took about 2,000 days or 5.5 years. Most of these transactions were initiated by previous administrations. The Kiapai project, which was acquired under the current administration, reduced that timeline by about 60%, but we need to find more efficient ways to move these transactions. Last October, the city worked with the Governor's Office of Housing to amend the Governor's Emergency Proclamation on housing. These amendments included waivers under HRS 46-1 that allowed the city to issue requests for qualifications versus requests for proposals. This is something that the city's not done in the past. RFQs allow us the ability to craft agreements with development partners that can be tailored to the specific needs of individual properties, and more importantly, they allow us to get the solicitation out the door faster. Since the EP was amended, DLM Director Tashner has crafted 3 sets of standardized RFQ documents that align with the various funding sources used to acquire the underlying properties. It includes GO bonds, Affordable Housing Fund, and Community Development Block Grants. Director Tashner has also finalized a complete wholesale revision of Chapter 38, which will make that solicitation RFQs a permanent procurement option in the city. As I've mentioned in the past, we want to be in the moving business, not the storage business. And we've identified 10 properties within the city's portfolio that can accommodate affordable housing development. Combined, these properties total approximately 35 acres of land that we believe can conservatively accommodate close to 1,900 housing units. When we add phase 1 of the Evilay Center redevelopment, that totals nearly 2,600 units. To move these properties into development, we are committed to issuing RFQs for all of these properties in calendar year 2025. The first RFQ is a portfolio of properties including Enna Road, 1615 Alloway, 1421 Pensacola, and 130 Baratania. We expect to publicly post this RFQ by the end of next week. The second RFQ will be seeking a development partner for the Evilay Center redevelopment, and we're trying to work hard to get that posted by January 31st. The balance of the properties would be posted for solicitation in stages over the following months. Go to the next slide. When we look at the financing options the city has to develop affordable housing, they're pretty limited. They include private activity bonds, general obligation bonds, and the Affordable Housing Fund. The federal LIHTC program is the nation's primary subsidy program for the development of affordable housing. There are 2 programs, a 9% and a 4%. The 4% is pretty limited, so we don't focus on that so much. But to access the 4% program, the credits must be paired with private activity bonds. As you know, we recently revived the city's private activity bond program. However, the total bond cap for the state of Hawaii is limited. For 2024, it was roughly $378 million. The city's share of that total is approximately $142 million. For this reason, private activity bonds are highly coveted, and they're typically oversubscribed by a ratio of 2.5 to 1. When we look at HHFDC's PAB awards over the last 5 years, the average could support approximately 950 units, and that's across the state, so less than 1,000 units a year. This equates to approximately 350 to 400 units annually on Oahu, exercising our PAB bonds. We have 2 PAB financing scheduled for closing in April and May this year, the KPT project and the West Lock project, totaling approximately $140 million, and combined, those projects will support the development of 430 housing units. We currently use general obligation bonds to acquire land and buildings, but they're not very flexible for facilitating housing development. They're subject to specific appropriation and statute language. They lapse after 2 years if not used. They're backed by the full faith and credit of the county, and they can only be used for public improvements of the county. All of these limitations make GO bonds very difficult to leverage for housing development. By comparison, multifamily taxable revenue bonds are a far more flexible resource for us, and they're used by municipalities across the nation. We're currently working with Bond Council to determine how the city can better leverage revenue bonds, and we'll be talking about that in a moment. Another resource that we have is the Charter Affordable Housing Fund, which is our most flexible financial resource. It's derived from 0.5% of the real estate taxes collected in the city annually. And the Affordable Housing Fund supports 60 AMI and below projects for 60 years. But it's also really limited in size. It generates approximately $8.5 to $9 million a year, which equates to 16 to 18 units of new construction. We've had success in applying small amounts of the Affordable Housing Fund over many projects, but this is also creating, it's a capacity taxing issue and creates a compliance burden for us if we're spread out too far. We have two affordable housing awards. We have an affordable housing award pending for $8 million that will hopefully be announced by midweek next week. And we have another request for grant proposals for $5 million that's also supposed to post next week. So on the one hand, we have the ability to buy property with GO bonds, but it's not a good way to simply acquire land and convey ground leases to developers and then have them wait in line for BAB credits, which are severely limited. So to accelerate the delivery of housing, we've really got to develop alternative housing options for financing. One model that we're examining closely is based on a model that was developed by Montgomery County, Maryland. They have a population of about 1 million people, which is the same as Oahu. The model uses multifamily taxable revenue bonds to provide low-cost construction equity financing to developers. That's on top of the traditional construction loan, so it would basically replace the LIHTC requirement that folks currently use to develop affordable housing. This model could potentially be adapted for use within the city with a combination of resources, including the issuance of multifamily revenue bonds, reactivating the dormant Housing Development Special Fund, and credit enhancing that structure with the Affordable Housing Fund. This last step would require a charter amendment. So we're also working with the HFDC to see if they can provide a credit enhancement for the structure using the state's rental housing revolving fund. Some of the key benefits of that structure, if we can make it work, it would be highly efficient. It wouldn't require the use of LIHTC. It would support mixed income projects that are internally supported, where the higher rents support the lower income AMI units. Revenue bonds do not impact the city's debt ceiling. The bonds are secured by the underlying assets, not the full faith and credit of the county. The city can provide low-cost, long-term ground leases to achieve lower rents by further supporting these projects. And the mixed income structure provides a demographic diversity that's desirable in these projects. It also creates an opportunity for us to work with and attract philanthropy and layer in other smaller funding resources to supplement the capital stack. Some are mentioned in your slides. We're currently working with Bond Counsel to further investigate the structure and to determine if it's feasible for the city and what its potential application could be. But just in terms of total size, for example, if we were to issue $100 million of taxable revenue bonds and combine that with 75% construction loans, that could create $300 million of potential funding. If those revenue bonds are 20 years, you can recycle those bonds once construction is complete and lease up and stabilization has occurred. And you could do that, you could rinse and repeat 4 or 5 times, generating $1.5 billion worth of total capitalization. Reorganization. To seriously attack our housing challenges, we need to create a platform to do that. Since the Department of Housing and Community Development was disbanded in 1998, housing functions have been dispersed throughout the city, and we've not had a centralized housing function for nearly 3 decades. The mayor announced that he would be investigating reorganization of the city's housing and homeless functions in his State of the City address in March of 2023. The Office of Housing organized a task force to study this proposal and submitted its recommendations to the mayor in December of 2023. The key components of that recommendation included 2 things. One was consolidating all of the housing functions under an expanded version of the existing Department of Land Management and renaming it the Department of Housing and Land Management. And then the second piece was consolidating all of the homeless functions and the supportive services under the Department of Community Services. The mayor approved these recommendations and announced his decision as a State of the City address last March. And we've been refining and finalizing the reorganization over the last several months. The major features of the structure include 3 new divisions. And you can advance. We'll be establishing a housing development division, a housing finance division, and a housing policy division. 3 of the positions within the structure are appointed positions: the director, the executive director, the deputy director, and the executive for housing, which would live in the policy division. That will give future administrations input into policy for housing. So the reorg plan is on the second page. You've got a larger grid of the full-blown platform. It's currently anticipating employing 51 people. It only requires 4 new positions, and so we'll be asking for those positions during budget season. The reorg plan is currently out for union consultation and is due back by this Friday, January 17th. A resolution for council approval has been drafted and will be submitted to council once union consultation has been completed at the end of the week, which could be hopefully as early as next week. But one ask that we will have is if we're serious about really making a dent in our housing challenges, we're going to need council's assistance during the budget process. We need to ensure that we can establish appropriate salary levels, particularly for these key positions in these new divisions that we'll be establishing. We've got to be able to attract qualified and capable candidates who can hit the ground running to help us drive execution. Other policy and process improvements had a number of great ordinances that were passed last year, 25-2 amending the LUO, and we commend Councilmember Kia Ina for her tireless efforts to get that done. Ordinance 25-3 that allows adaptive reuse, and this is really important because we can now build apartment units over retail. Ordinance 2023, which provided support for Bill 7 projects. Ordinance 2329 which allows self-certification, and then obviously the governor's EP amendments allowing us to issue RFQs. But we have a lot more to do. We have been working with the Department of Planning permitting, and we've been in discussions with UHERO to establish a fellowship program to support a review of all of the city's housing policies. That includes Chapter 29, Affordable Housing Requirements, 201H, addressing the needs for moderate income households, increasing the city's financing capacity for affordable housing, looking at ways to support additional density along Skyline, and enhancing predictability for developers. All of these things require a little bit of data analysis. You know, it'd be helpful if we can understand why we're just making decisions and the data behind driving those decisions. So we believe that working with UH will give us a good head start on doing that. One neat thing that we completed, the Office of Housing partnered with UHERO to create a first-of-its-kind tool that consolidates data on government-subsidized housing units across Oahu. This centralized interactive database tracks more than 35,000 cost-restricted units across 332 properties subsidized by over 50 government programs. It's an important tool that will help us provide critical insights to support effective policy decisions. The Explorer breaks out that information by city council district, so we invite you to take a look. A press release announcing the launch of the Explorer, I believe, is scheduled for tomorrow. So just a final comment, you know, the Blangiardi administration is determined that the city and county must take a more direct and active role in the development, financing, and execution and delivery of affordable housing. We need to ensure that the availability of housing for Oahu residents across the income spectrum, and we need to stem the trend of out-migration driven by these high costs. We believe implementing these strategic measures provide a solid foundation for achieving those goals. Thank you again for your time today, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Mahalo for that. Would also welcome Councilmember Okimoto to the chamber, and we'll go to Vice Chair Cordero for questions, and then anyone else on the committee as well. Mahalo.
Thank you, Chair Wire. Hi, Executive Director Auger. I was just wondering about, first off, it sounds like a whole lot of consolidation at the first steps to working towards policy, then the consolidation of the departments, right?
Yes.
Are there any further consolidation of further duties of other departments like DPP or any other
thank you for the question. It's an excellent question. We really wanted to stand up the Department of Housing and Land Management quickly and consolidate quickly so we could hit the ground running. We've got so much work to do in terms of trying to find additional financing mechanisms and also to get our existing inventory out the door into the hands of developers to support affordable housing. But there's more to do. One of the things that we're taking a look at is we've got 2 portfolios of affordable housing that we currently manage within the city. One is managed by the Department of Community Services, which contains approximately 1,500 units, and the other is currently managed by the Department of Housing and Land Management, which contains 1,500 units. Why we have two separate divisions basically managing the same asset class is interesting. So we want to look at potentially combining those, all of those assets under the Department of Land Management, where they would be more appropriately managed.
Thank you for sharing that. And then what will be managed under the Department of Community Services will be what again?
They're going to focus primarily on homelessness and supportive housing and community activities.
Thank you. And then are there any consolidation on DPP's side that you're
so on
looking
the
at?
DPP side, we're doing two things. One, as I mentioned, we're going to be working with DPP to basically do a top-down review. Chapter 29, for instance, was developed 7 years ago. We really want to do a top-down review of that chapter to understand how the affordable housing rules are working, what we can do better, what's working, what's not. But the other thing that we're going to be doing in a parallel effort with them is understanding how we can migrate more policy functions from DPP into DLM, into the policy division with DLM. That includes a lot of things like review of unilateral agreements, the 201H agreement reviews, executing development agreements with contractors. And it's a lot of work, and that would involve many people, and it would involve a lot of training to get staff at the Department of Housing and Land Management up to speed. We'd like to think that we could do something in 2026, but that might be a 2027 review.
Oh.
But we're currently in conversation to do that, and dialogue to do that.
Got it. And so for the 3 added divisions to the future Department of Land and DHLM, Department of Housing and Land Management, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. So with 3 divisions, are you looking to move any positions from either DCS, DPP, or any other agencies to the new Department of Housing and Land Management?
Go to the previous slide. So just to clarify, there would actually be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can't see the third one. There would actually be 6 divisions. There's the Administration Division, the Housing Development Division, the Housing Finance Division, Housing Policy Division, a Housing Property and Asset Management Division, and a Land Transactions Division. So there's 6 divisions altogether. In addition, we'll be reorganizing the Conservation Office so it becomes an office of the Department of Housing and Land Management versus division, just not that many people in it.
May I ask why you're having Housing Property Asset Management Division? I get that management is different than transactions as well as the development division, but would you be able to, I guess, loop that into another division?
I didn't understand the question. I'm sorry.
So I'm just wondering if you could loop in Property and Asset Management Division to another division, such as either development or land transaction or
they're really
administration.
Separate.
I know they're separate,
Yeah.
but I mean, we contract out, right? We contract out management.
Yes.
So I don't want the city to then be like heavily involved in the management part because we contract that out already.
But it requires oversight.
I understand. So but I'm saying maybe it could be fitting under administration because this, while I understand that this is a heavy responsibility, I just see that it's like a really heavy hand on like just overreaching into what we already contract out.
I see. I don't think that's been a challenge so far. And we'd like to, as I just mentioned, we'd like to consolidate more housing properties under that division for sure. That would be a 2026 lift.
I'm not saying don't have oversight though. I'm just saying I think that we're putting too many people into this one area when we go out for RFQ or RFP. That's what the conditions of the contract should state, that they are managing that for us, for the city.
And they do.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, and overall, with the possible new DHLM, so you're not going to be, I guess you are, housing from MDO. You're not going to be moving anyone from DPP to DHLM?
So there are 6 existing positions in DPP that were established, I guess, but never filled. I guess my understanding was they were stood up to, they were created to stand up a housing function with DPP, but that never occurred. So we'll be moving those positions, and many of those positions will populate the Housing Development Division, the Housing Finance Division.
So it's, okay, so I do like that I hear that it's like 6 positions.
Yes.
And you're not asking for another 6 positions.
That's correct.
And that you're transferring it to the 6 newer divisions into this new department.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Got it.
And there are two positions coming over from DCS, but they're coming without people.
Okay.
So we have empty positions that we'll fill. And then we
Okay.
have 5 positions moving over from the Office of Housing. So the Office of Housing will go away under MDO and will be populated
Okay.
within the
So
DHLM.
So with that amount of positions, and then you'll then ask for how many more positions for the new department?
There's secretarial positions and administrative positions primarily.
Okay,
And
thank
there's
you.
only 4 new positions we're asking for.
Thank you. And then for policy positions, for changes, I know that we have things that we're looking at for 201H, and you said you're moving it from, or you're looking at DPP, DPP's oversight of 201H moving to the future DHLM.
We're exploring
correct?
that now, yes.
Okay, and then so everything 201H will be then with DHLM.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
If we all
Thank
agree
you for
to the
that
structure.
clarification.
Sure, yeah.
Sorry.
If I might add, just to add to answer to that question, the Department of Planning and Permitting is really, their core function is land use. But it seems like we've loaded them up with a lot of housing functions over the years because we didn't have a centralized housing function. But over 3 decades, trying to extract that from DPP and put it somewhere else is a big lift. And we didn't think we'd have the time to achieve that this year. But we're continuing to talk about it and work through it.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for my first round. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Those are great questions. Just to kind of follow up. So when we're talking about the housing, property, and the asset management division, how many staff was that division supposed to have?
We can go to the second slide.
Yeah, I can flip on my PowerPoint too, but I didn't know if it was just at the top of mind.
Looks like 7.
Okay,
6, 8, 9. Is it? I can't read.
I see. So I kind of I think
Yes.
if I understood, just want to for discussion too. We're talking about, if we're doing management agreements for properties, how many staff do you really need to oversee a particular management agreement? Is that kind of what yeah, okay, I kind of get that. Just wanted to clarify. Can we go to page 51?
Sure.
Director? Yeah. And just briefly, I was going to ask if you could outline the timeline again for the RFPs for
Oh, sure.
which sections?
Which section is that? So the 2 that we're trying to get out the door this month are an RFP that would be for a portfolio of properties, including Enna Road, 130 South Baratania, 1421 Pensacola, and 1615 Alawai. And
What was the 2 in between Inner Road and 1615?
so we'll do it again. So Enna Road,
Yeah,
1615 Alawai,
yeah.
1421 Pensacola,
Okay.
and 130 Baratania.
Okay, those were this month.
That's correct.
Okay.
Hopefully next week. They were supposed to go out last Friday.
Okay, and that's the actual initial RFP.
That's correct. RFQ.
RFQ.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the remaining ones you said ended January? Is that what I heard? Or next
Yeah,
month?
so the next one would be the Evil A Center, and we're working hard to try to get that out by the end of the month.
Okay, end of month.
Right. And then the balance of the properties would be staged throughout the balance of the year so we don't have 12 in the marketplace at the same time.
So throughout this year?
That's correct.
Okay. So not in a single RFQ, but
That's correct. Yeah.
one-offs, or you'll batch them, or we don't know? Are you going to batch the properties in multiple, or is it each individual one will have an RFQ?
So the first RFQ, the portfolio of properties, they were smaller properties, a little bit unique, and we wanted to get them out just to see what the interest was, because that'll also inform how we approach the balance of the RFQs. The other properties are a little bit larger. So like, for instance, the Evilay Center, that's a big development. That's 600 to 700 units of housing in the first phase. That's a big development partner. It's a big lift that might require a pre-development agreement and a lot of negotiation. And so the thought was that we could, bleed the properties out over the balance of the year as we issue the RFQs. We'll get responses from potential development partners. We'll score them, we'll select them, and then we'll enter into negotiations with them. But we want to get them out the door this year. We need housing now.
I appreciate that. I'm wondering, because I know how, like, for example, Councilmember Keino would have DPP come to do those brief updates on the permitting process. Maybe we could incorporate that into housing.
That would be my pleasure.
Every month.
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be like the whole thing, but yeah, we can check in next month, see how things are. Last question I had, then we'll do another round if folks have. Could you walk us through, just so I can wrap my mind around again, the charter amendment issue if we're going to switch to the multifamily taxable revenue bonds?
Yeah, I didn't want to go there because it's really complicated. That could take an hour in itself, but I'm happy to do it for you. So when we looked at the Montgomery model, they issued $50 million in taxable multifamily revenue bonds, but they were issuing it to support construction. So construction transactions typically have interest during the construction period capitalized in the capital stack. Mm-hmm. But if you run into a hiccup, if a project gets slowed down, if something happens and the timeline goes longer and you run out of that interest, what happens? Usually, it's a default on behalf of the developer, and they've got to pony up and put more money into the transaction. These are bonds, however, and the bondholders are going to be looking for confidence that they're going to get repaid. So what the Montgomery model did was the Montgomery County issued a 20-year forward-looking appropriation for $3.4 million to support the interest on those multifamily bonds over the period. And I didn't think that we would be able to commit future administrations to a forward-looking appropriation. So we looked around to see how else we could potentially solve that issue and provide that credit support to bondholders. And one of the interesting things that we looked at was the Affordable Housing Revenue Fund allows us to pay principal and interest on general obligation bonds. Unfortunately, it does not say "and revenue bonds," and that's a sticking point. So we met with bond counsel, and they said, they advised us that we could certainly explore this structure, but we would have to make an amendment to the charter. So that was disappointing because it would be 2 years before we'd be able to do that. So we went over and met with our friends at the Hawaii, at HHFDC, and we shared the structure with them, and they loved it. They really, they're really excited about the opportunity because we could potentially use Tier 2 money within the Rental Housing Revolving Fund to provide that pledge required to comfort bond investors. And it fits the HHFDC program, and it would also allow us to address, this missing middle demographic that there's really no subsidy for, that's 60 to 140 AMI. Montgomery County, their structure is, again, it's internally supporting, where the higher rents support the lower rents. So if you've got 100 units, they typically do about 30% of the project affordable. So, you have the ability to stack, but we could do different things like layer in project-based vouchers to support lower AMI. We have pockets of different smaller money that's tough to apply to big developments, but if we control that and we control the financing, we could potentially layer in. So it just gives us a lot more flexibility if we're in the control of the financing. So we're continuing to work through that. We've got some calls coming up with the Bonds Council over the next month or so, and we'll provide updates as we make progress around the feasibility.
Okay, so this would be changing the AMI level as well?
So the Affordable Housing Fund is really flexible. If we use a couple $1 million from the Affordable Housing Fund, well, as long as 3 or 4 of the units are 60 AMI and below, it justifies using the fund.
Walk me through that again.
Sure. So the Affordable Housing Fund is targeted for 60 AMI and below.
Yeah.
And so we would need to include 60 AMI and below units in the project to justify using the Affordable Housing Fund, and that's not problematic for us.
And then the portion of that project that's 60% AMI could be paid for by the Affordable Housing Fund.
That's correct.
And
The
then
other,
and then the other amount would be a different source.
yeah.
Okay.
The other unique feature about the structure is if we pledge a portion of the Affordable Housing Fund on a forward-looking basis, if that, in a particular year, if that pledge is not used, it's an unused component, well, then we're free to use that for something else. So it's really just forward-looking, on a forward-looking basis.
Okay, what portion of the Affordable Housing Fund do we anticipate being used in this manner?
Excuse me?
What percentage of the Affordable Housing Fund would be utilized?
We've never used we've never used Affordable Housing Fund to pledge.
No, I mean in terms of the plan. Like what percentage would the plan?
So we looked at, for instance, if we wanted to stand up a $100 million multifamily revenue taxable bond offering, based on current interest rates, that amount would be roughly $6.4 million. So
Okay.
that's about 70% of the 67% of the fund.
Okay.
But if it's unused, then it's available in the following year.
Okay, and then I know that, and last question, I'll go around the committee for folks who have questions. You have some, yeah? Okay, Affordable Housing Fund RFP that went out, I know you said awards are coming out.
Yeah, we have an award that was supposed to be announced Friday, and we believe it's going to be announced next Wednesday. We're teeing up a press release.
Okay, so all the awardees know who they are?
Yes.
Okay. And folks that weren't awarded got notices of not,
They'll be informed.
so they haven't been informed yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any, Councilmember Okimoto, unless, yeah, yeah. You have questions?
Sure, I have a couple of questions that pertain to different areas. But first, I do want to make a comment. I appreciate all the work that you and your team have put into this, and I appreciate the attention to detail that you've put into a number of our city programs. I mean, the discussion of the Housing Development Special Fund is a really important one to me. I tried to bring a lot of attention to that during the empty homes tax discussion. There's also some additional funds which are locked away. I call them kind of orphaned funds. They have been sitting there for decades for various programs. I think it's time that we unlock some of those. We can work on those hopefully in the next budget cycle. Speaking of some of the financing, I wanted to start with the Affordable Housing Fund. I appreciate all these projects that you point to. And there's a wide range of project types. I wanted to ask, what are the standards by which you measure the effectiveness of the affordable housing investments that you make? Hocking Hollow in my district, that's $98,000 a unit of AHF versus, you know, Halabaview, it was a fairly small investment per unit.
Right.
It seems to me that, you know, housing people at all levels is important, but how do we gauge how effective it's being used?
You know, there's been a lot of discussion about how best to use it. You know, do we top up LIHTC transactions? Do we provide, you know, the next RF request for grant proposal that we're teeing up will specifically look at SRO type units, single room occupancy type units, to see if, you know, what the demand for that is. But there is no real standard in terms of what the award is. It depends more on the appetite, but I can tell you categorically that there's plenty of appetite. It's just been an issue of how do we spread it out. But then again, spreading it out too much creates the, you know.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. So, you know, I know you've laid out kind of the options. Do you personally have a philosophy or maybe a direction for how we start to measure this?
How do we get the most leverage out of it? So for instance, if we can generate $100 million in taxable revenue bonds because we're parking $6.4 million of the Affordable Housing Fund in a pledge, and that $100 million can be combined with a 75% senior construction loan to create $300 million in financing that we can then rinse and repeat and recycle over, you know, every 4 years, 5 times. It's $1.5 billion in housing projects over the next 20 years. That's how I would like to use the fund, if you ask me. That's my personal opinion.
And then on pages 56 and 57, that's the kind of flow chart of the bridge loan program that you'd be looking at.
Yes.
It looks here, it looks like here we're prioritizing kind of very large projects with these fundings?
It's only an example.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. I wanted to make sure that we're looking at a wide range of creative financing. I mean, we just met with some of the Bill 7 developers who are
Right.
looking at more creative financing for that. And then, of course, there's the really big guys
Right.
who need it too.
But if we look at it, if we're $500,000-600,000 a unit now developed, unfortunately, we're the highest development cost state in the country, and we need to look at bigger deals.
Yeah. Okay. And then two more things. On the private activity bond side, I know that there's some state law that regulates this, and a lot of it is also regulated via cooperative agreements between the city and HHFDC.
That's correct.
I get this feeling that we as the council don't have very much say in this program and how it's administered and how it's distributed. And frankly, as the legislative branch, I would like to see us have some more input into how this is used, especially because this is such an important tool. Is there any way that we can have some more input in this?
Well, it's a competitive process. So when we maintain the bonds ourselves, when we quote unquote keep them, we would issue an announcement that the bonds are available. We would take applications. Applications are based on the same QAP that the HHFDC uses. We would score those applications, and they would be driven. The scores are generally driven primarily by readiness. Who's ready to go? Because the funds do lapse over a certain period of time, so we do need to get them out the door. And then we would select the highest candidates, and we would award. It's the same process that the HHFDC goes through.
Okay. And then two more questions. This next one's fairly simple. Now that you were talking about the transition to DHLM, I noticed that DLM, the current DLM, doesn't have any ordinances regulating kind of their functions in ROH Chapter 2. Hopefully over the next few years we can work together and get give you guys some power, some explicit powers to do your job. And I think that's something we'd all welcome doing.
We'd
I guess
be
that's not
delighted.
really a question, but
Thank you.
all right, last thing. In part of our discussions about the empty homes tax and other things, it was sort of alluded to that because the charter mandates that 1/2% of property tax revenues goes into there, we as a council, for some reason, can't add monies to that beyond it. Is that actually the case? Is that the position?
I'd have to review the charter and check with Cora, but I don't know. I mean, I guess the question would be: are we allocating funds to the Affordable Housing Fund, and then what bucket would they come out of, operating or CIP?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we have this very effective pocket of money, and maybe if we need a little bit more, we can put it there because it's so effective.
We'll find a way to use it if you want to give us Affordable Housing Fund development money. So
Understood. All right, thank you. That's it.
Actually, I appreciate that. So I'm hearing that you feel like you can use it. So if we put it into the budget, it can be used as Affordable Housing Fund money, because I know there's been some disagreement between.
So a couple of things, for the
council
last
and
couple
Cora.
of years, I think we put $170 million in the CIP budget, but it's GO bonds, and it's really difficult to use that. We also have to have deals stood up to be able to use it. It's also been hard to justify acquiring more property if we're still trying to get old, first in, first out, right? We're just trying to get old inventory out the door in the hands of development partners. All we're doing is just loading more up. We'd like to get the old stuff out, get it in the hands of developers, get it into production, and then we can reload.
Appreciate that. Thanks. Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Director.
Aloha.
I had a couple of questions, and
Certainly.
if you answered this before I got to the hearing, I apologize, but if you could,
No worries.
just be kind. On page 51, you mentioned the projects that you guys have started for this year, and then coming up, I guess, the 130 South Baritania and those other three. And I
Yes.
think there's total 2,592, almost 2,600. What are the plans for the rest of them? What are the projected units looking like year over year? Is there like a timeline that we're looking at?
Not yet.
5, 10, 15, 20?
Yes.
Because if you're looking at what you mentioned, that's maybe 300, 150 plus another, 100. So if we're looking at, I'm trying to figure out how we're going to take down this or start tacking away at the 2,600 that we have listed there.
Sure. So the lands that we identified can support, not including Evil Center, which is a massive redevelopment. The lands that the properties that we've identified can support conservatively roughly 1,900 units of housing. once we issue RFQs, we can select a development partner, enter and engage them with, enter into a ground lease with them to convey the property to them, subject to a development agreement. And they would do that work, and we will work with them to figure out how we would phase the development over time. But there's a lot of work that's got to get done before that. They've got to get all of their entitlements in place. That means environmental review, historical preservation review, and then they've got to come in for titles, permits, and approvals before they can actually start construction. Once we're engaged with a development partner, then we can develop those schedules together, and we can give you a comprehensive, there'll be 3, 4, 5, 10 projects moving at the same time, all delivering it at different times, stage times.
And these 4 that you mentioned, you said they're trying to start at the end of this month, and so that's starting, and you're looking at how long before those are complete?
So when I say getting them out the door, that means getting the solicitation into the hands of developers. So developers can say, I want to bid on this one. I want to send my qualifications in for this particular asset. And then once we, it's a competitive process. Once we select a partner, then we would start negotiating ground leases and development agreements with them. Once we've got approval from council to move forward with those agreements, then we would start the development process and creating budgets and schedules and so forth. But so it's a long process.
I can imagine. I'm just trying to get an idea of a timeline again, because there's quite a bit, these 2,600 units on your yearly, and so I
could give you one, but it would be speculative.
Okay. And I did notice there's just one specifically in, I think, a part of my district in Mililani. I was just curious because I saw the area, and what are the plans for that? As far as I am aware, there's no more development in Mililani. So I was trying to understand how you guys plan to.
Mililani Mauka?
Yeah, by the park and ride.
So we have a park and ride site there that was intended to be a parking lot.
Correct.
And so we want to look to see if we can get that developed because it's a big land site.
That's the part where we've been trying to do a community garden, actually. But I'm curious to know, because as far as I know, there's no more development in all of Mililani, no more homes. So I was curious as to how this came about, this plan.
It's a property that's in our inventory. Mm-hmm. It's sitting in existing inventory.
Correct.
So and I think this one came to us from the Department of Transportation Services. They said, we've got this piece of land. It was going to be a park and ride. We don't see it being a park and ride anymore. Or maybe there'd be some parking, but can we potentially use this for housing development?
Oh, interesting.
And,
okay.
the idea is, well, let's find out. Let's get it into the marketplace and see.
So that you're not sure if that's even possible. You just have it on the list of
Oh, yeah, not
options.
yet. No, we know that it can support housing. We have a rough idea of how many units based on the size of the parcel, but we have no idea what development partners might want to do with it or how they view the asset. But it's in a great location, I can tell you that.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. Okay.
Certainly.
And then on page 67, I believe, or 60, yeah. It's 68 on the handout, actually. I know there's a list of innovations that DPP has part of the plan, this Clarity, CivCheck, and Project Box. Do you expect that with this commercial code review being reduced, could this, I know this is not you specifically, but do you expect like this, the average 60-day timeline we currently are under being reduced more, and then that will help with the expedition of the process that you just described?
We included that slide as a nod to DPP because of the incredible work that they've done over the last couple of years to really try to turn that situation around. We're seeing, they're starting to get positive press, which is welcome. So we're seeing a lot of progress there, and we wanted to acknowledge that process, that progress, because they are making progress in with that work.
Okay. And I think
I'm losing my voice. I apologize.
Sorry, just one more, and the pages might be different. So if I get the page number wrong, please again excuse that. But on page 66 of our handout here, again, this is just I'm trying to get an understanding of where the administration's ideas are planning forward, because it has there that the council's with Governor Green's emergency proclamation to have a comprehensive set of recommendations presented to the council by late 2025. And so is there like a timeline for that? I think it says, maybe it's DLM drafted amendments to
that's
chapter 30 for council
38.
consideration early 2025. that would make these changes permanent. Can you
Yes,
kind of
Director
expound on that?
Tashner has basically done a complete revision of Chapter 38, and I believe that she's been making the rounds with council members to
Correct.
discuss that, and that will be submitted shortly.
Okay. And so with that, yeah, I think I was trying to understand. I know that I have a meeting scheduled with her as well.
Yes,
talk about
so I guess the point of that was we really wanted to get these properties out the door. So we went over across the street and we went with the governor's office. We said, we really want to get these properties out the door. Can you help us? Can you give us some language in the emergency proclamation? Director Tashner is addressing that in the changes to Chapter 38, which will make those those opportunities permanent for us, so we can continue to issue requests for qualifications without having to seek amendments to the governor's EPs.
Sorry, so just for those who may not be able to sit in with the meetings that we have with Director Tashner, could you just repeat what's the purpose of what she's trying to accomplish?
Well, she's revising Chapter 38 in its entirety, and that's basically the ordinance that controls our leasing, if you will. And what the one specific thing in the changes to Chapter 38 that will be useful for the work that we're doing is allowing us to issue requests for qualifications versus having to issue requests for proposals. The challenge with requests for proposals is that, particularly like for a big project like Evilay Center, developers aren't going to understand. They're not going to know what all the issues are. They're not going to. We won't be able to get apples to apples responses because there's so much due diligence yet to work with. I spent 7 years with the Hawaii Public Housing Authority working on some of the bigger master plans, for instance, Mayor Wright. And what we would typically do there is issue an RFQ, find the most qualified development partner, and then enter into pre-development agreements with them, whereby we would work together to work through the due diligence, understand what all of the issues are, and then we would collect all that information, do the master planning, and craft a development agreement that says, okay, now that we know what we have, this is what we're going to build. And so we're trying to do this, something similar here in the city.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Certainly.
Thank you. And just a quick question before I go to Vice Chair Cordero. So regarding the Milani Park Ride property,
Yes.
would it be DLM or DTS at this time? They would be the best person to talk to or ask questions, or both together?
And what about the property?
Just about the idea of putting housing at the Park and Ride.
It could be both of us together. What we're trying to do is get an RFQ out to see if there's interest in putting housing on that property. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to clarify that for our sake and also for Councilmember Kumamoto,
Sure.
in case it might be good to talk to both. Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Executive Director again. Okay, so my question is, how has the demand been for the city-owned or financially affordable units by the city? What's the vacancy rate too?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
How is the demand for the city-supported or financed affordable units? Do we have a vacancy rate?
For our existing portfolio, my understanding is it's north of 95%. That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Which is good.
Oh, that's good.
With normal turnover, that's great. Yeah.
Okay, and so is there a way that you are looking to bump it to the 100%, or are you looking at any policy or rule making changes or consolidation just to make it easier to get people in to
So
these units?
you'd never get to 100%.
Okay.
It's physically impossible. During the course of the year, you have people that move in and that move out. You have natural turnover. You got to come in, paint units, renovate units, et cetera. You're always going to have a little bit of vacancy. When we underwrite new property, we only underwrite to a 95% occupancy level. That's considered full occupancy.
Okay. Again, are you looking at any other policy changes, rulemaking changes, or any other efforts to help get people either aware of available units or available units, or making it easier for people to apply?
The city's portfolio is well occupied, but the affordable housing, the subsidy housing explorer that we stood up with UHERO will be a great tool for researchers. And one of the things that we're looking at is, the 35,000 units that are included in that database. What if we could make that an affordable housing Zillow, so that people who are looking for a place to live in a certain area could go to that site, see what the subsidy is, see what's available, et cetera. But that would take an enormous lift, and it's a lot of maintenance because if we think through that, we've got to track the occupancy of 35,000 units every month. So we'd have to get the managers of those properties tied in, et cetera. That's a longer term vision, if you will. It'd be great to have.
Longer term, and we're still working on the foundation for DHLM anyway.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so in the meantime, when, DHLM, I guess what, end of 2027 is going to be stood up possibly fully?
DHLM?
Yeah.
We'd like to have it fully stood up by July 1st, 2025,
Oh, okay.
this year.
With all the divisions and all the reclassified positions in those divisions as well?
Yeah, so we'll have it stood up. We won't,
Okay.
it takes forever to fill positions, unfortunately, which is one of the reasons we suggested we need to have the right salary ranges to attract the right people. But we expect to be fully operational, July 1st. It'll take time to get it completely
Okay, so
occupied.
it's the policy changes and like the merging of duties that will then take till 2027.
That's correct, if not sooner. Yeah,
Okay.
because my understanding is that the merger can be completed on the authority of the mayor, subject to council approval or disapproval.
So I'm just worried that like during movement and mergers and position changes, need for reclassification with Department of Human Resources, that a lot of our efforts may stall. And of course, we don't want anything to stall, right?
So 47 position descriptions, we've written 47 position
Okay.
descriptions over the last, so that's one of the things that we were doing since the mayor's announcement of the reorg at the state of the city, is writing those, basically making those tweaks, writing those position descriptions. That entire package was submitted about a month ago to the unions for consultation. That consultation is due on Friday. So we're well ahead of that curve.
Okay. One last thing is, with the divisions that are in DHLM, which one would be involved in ensuring either whoever's contracted to do the project or the building the units to do outreach to the community? Will it just be admin?
The department, that would be the development division together with the
division.
development partner.
Understood. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Would welcome Chair Waters to the chamber. Councilmember Okimura, I know you had a quick question.
Good question. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Quick follow-up to Councilmember Cordero. You mentioned the 47 positions. That's what you're asking for to fill this new department. That's
So there are 51 positions across the platform. 47 exist within the city.
And right now, currently, how many are actually with people in them?
Probably half of those.
And I'm just thinking you're going to need 51. This is a whole new department, so you're looking for another. You said half of them, another 20-something.
We need to fill those positions. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And what are those positions mainly for?
Oh, they're spread across the platform. So development division, finance division, policy division, et cetera. Once the merge is approved, the folks are going to have to apply for civil service jobs. They become civil service jobs. So we'll be doing a bit of hiring.
Okay.
But that's going to take, I would assume that's going to take several years. What we'd really like to do is identify the key candidates for the divisions who are going to help us actually execute, and then fill in below them. So it'll be really important to hire those key people first so we can get things moving.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. So just for the committees and for the department or offices and directors insight. So I'm thinking that maybe in terms of one of our reoccurring updates would be something similar to page 51, right? Just adding the RFQ update.
Yeah, the 10 properties that we intend that we're responsible for. We tried to make the report and our strategies measurable so we can be held accountable, right?
Okay.
And so we're committing, we're going to get these 10 out the door this year.
Yeah.
And so we're already putting that grid together. Here's when they went out. This is when the RFQ was issued. This is the response time. This is when we had the pre-conference. This is when we selected a development partner. This is when we entered into negotiation. We'll put all of that together.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Of course. Yeah,
and so
that's
kind of
just
like
normal business.
awesome, kind of like what DPP had been providing. So it can be a one pager and easy to go through.
Yeah, we put that one pager together.
Yeah, no, I mean, similar to what was going on in planning. So I'm just
Certainly.
like, don't feel like you have to do a whole lot of extra work because I know you guys are working a lot
Yeah,
already.
it's just
so.
normal business management for us. So,
And then maybe we can include an update on the reorganization with Vice Chair like that as a separate agenda item reoccurring.
hopefully by then the reorganization will be complete.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah,
So,
so the resolution is standing, so just to be clarified, particularly for Chair Waters, because he was not here. So the union consultation is due on Friday, the
Perfect.
17th. And we have a resolution standing by that once we get sign off internally, we'll be able to present to council.
okay. So we'll just flag that as having an update at the next committee as well. Just quickly, do we think the list on page 51 is going to grow, or is there additional inventory we're assessing?
As I mentioned,
Yeah, that's
so the feeling internally is that, hey, let's get the old stuff out the door first
exactly.
before we reload. And then let's figure out how we're going to work with developers to finance that product to make sure we can actually deliver. Because again, we can buy a lot of stuff with geo bonds, we can put it in the inventory, but unless we get it in the hands of developers and we can actually develop it, and more importantly, finance it. Because again, if we deliver land and a developer takes that land and he puts together a development scheme, and then he's got to walk next door to the HHFDC and get in line for private activity bonds and low-income housing tax credits, we're not getting anywhere. And that's a limited resource. Private activity bonds and combined with 4% credits will get us approximately 400 units a year on Oahu. We need to do more.
Appreciate that. Okay, so that gives us some starting points. If folks, once we get back to discussion, if there's any ideas of what we could add to the committee for updates for the next meeting and reoccurring as needed, I'm open to suggestions. I'll just ask, do we have a list that we can also see of city inventory that could be appropriate? Sounds like there hasn't been a final decision made on properties outside of this, but if we're in a place to also evaluate with community, right, and kind of get feedback.
Absolutely.
Just knowing where the city parcels are that are.
Right, which is why, we didn't want to overload you with the deck.
No, yeah.
But we wanted you to see what the property was, whose district it was in, how many number of units it could potentially support, what the total land size was, just so you could see that as you're reviewing.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we look at it as well is, are we equally dispersed? We had a conversation with Councilmember Tulba. Are we equally dispersing, the wealth, so to speak? Are we addressing everyone's district? And this is going to give us an opportunity to start looking at that. But to be very clear, once we get the existing inventory out the door, so to speak, and once we get development contracts and ground leases negotiated, then it will be time to reload. Absolutely.
Appreciate that insight. Chair, I'll go ahead and take testimony while you're reviewing too, and then we can come back to questions during discussion. Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead, Mahalo Director. Could actually stand by for a little bit. We might have some more questions in a moment.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, no, thank you. And then we'll go to in-person testimony. Don't believe we have any in-person registered testifiers. Anyone wishing to testify in person can make their way up to the microphone. Seeing none, will go online. I believe we had Raquel Achu registered to testify. Anyone wishing to testify can use the raise hand feature at this time to signal that desire. Madam Clerk, is anyone online registered or unregistered wanting to testify?
Chair, testifier is not logged on.
Okay, mahalo. And then seeing no one else online with the raise hand feature, we'll go ahead and close testimony and come back to discussion if there's any other questions or thoughts. We'll go ahead and go to Vice Chair Cordero. Mahalo.
Thank you. Executive Director, I just want to have you point out again about the Affordable Housing Fund. I know that you were telling Councilmember Dos Santos Tam about the Affordable Housing Fund, and then he talked about it being capped with how much funding we can put into it. And would you be able to just clarify what AMI that fund is able to be used for?
Certainly, the Affordable Housing Fund. The Affordable Housing Fund is directed primarily towards 60 AMI and below, and it supports, those units have to be supported for and remain affordable for 60 years. It's not so much a cap on the fund, The fund is generated by 0.5% of real estate tax, property real estate tax collections every year, which is roughly $8.5 to $9 million.
Okay, thank you. And I know that in this document, it talks about the different restrictions through the use of different bonds and funds. But what AMI levels is the city or is the city administration generally building for?
Oh boy, we need housing across the entire income spectrum.
Yeah.
One of the big demands right now seems to be that middle income level, actually between 60 and 140 AMI, and there's no subsidy for that.
Right.
And so one of the reasons that we're looking for alternative financing sources like the structure that we've been exploring is because it meets that demographic need exactly. And that could, so if you think through it, if we're using private activity bonds, and that can help us with 4% LIHTC credits generate 400 units a year of 60 AMI and below. And then we could use an alternative structure to generate 60 to 140 AMI, an equivalent amount. Now we've just doubled our inventory and we're meeting a broader demographic. So really, really important that we look at financing alternatives.
And we are limited, and the Affordable Housing Fund is limited for 60% and below as well, right?
It's 60 AMI and below.
Okay.
And it's just tiny. That's $9 million is.
Okay, so we know the
current
issue is
costs.
the middle, is you said from 60 to 140, right? And so are we making any policy changes or funding changes, like new
Sure, yeah.
funds?
So as mentioned,
What's happening?
we're currently working with DPP. We're going to stand up a working group that's going to review all of our housing policies, but we're going to do that in conjunction with a fellowship that we're going to stand up with UHERO. Because when we're making those decisions, it's really important to be able to analyze the socioeconomic and demographic data to understand, well, what is it exactly that we need? Unfortunately, right now, we need everything. So, we can't move fast enough to deliver housing for every demographic.
Okay, so you said that there's no, I guess, pot of money that will be able to subsidize what we're missing, is what you said earlier, right?
Yeah, we're going to come up with ways to, for instance, like the fund that we're suggesting.
Right.
I mean, it's designed specifically to focus on that demographic.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you, I guess maybe you already sought other types of efforts nationally, right, or federally?
Yeah, we've been looking around.
Okay, just hoping, just asking, making sure.
Yeah,
Thank you, Chair.
Montgomery County is a tiny little county,
Yeah.
yet they're doing this great thing.
No, that's a great question, Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you for the questions.
I'm wondering if at some point, maybe when it's fleshed out, you said you're going to have a working group with that particular model. Maybe have them also come back and do a presentation to flesh out the details, if the committee would like. Yeah, and because I just wanted to go, so we'll do that. And then page 67, I know we talked about all these different components. So I was just curious if the expectation should be that there'll be proposed legislation coming over to Chair's office as it relates to these forward-looking issues, or?
Yeah, so from my perspective, we see a lot of legislation every week at the ledge, nipping around at the edges of, existing laws, rules, regulations.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, it would be really, I think, helpful for us to do a top-down review. Some of these laws, rules, regulations have been on the books for a while. Are they working? How do we, if we spread all of those laws, we've added a lot of stuff over the last decade or so. If we explore all of that to understand what's working, what's not, are we slowing down development?
Did the consultant not look at that, or that's what I'm trying to understand?
Yeah, no, not really.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to look at that a lot more closely. And I want to do that together with data analysis so that we can understand how we're making decisions and why we're making decisions.
Because I guess part of our role too, right, is and trying to be collaborative and understanding the administration was going to be looking at potential needs to adjust admin rules, right?
Right.
Not wanting to, and then also contemplating needs to change maybe parts of the revised ordinances, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm just, I guess, Director Tashner's work on Chapter 38 is one part of that, but in terms of the broader conversations that have come up during the stakeholder meetings over the past couple years now. I'm just wondering if any of that is materializing in what the stakeholders have been requesting, right? When we're looking at the various concerns and barriers to development. Like,
Yeah.
is any of that in the works? Like, would we expect drafts this year, or are we at stage one again?
And I've only been in the role a very short time.
Yeah.
It's a couple of months, end of the year. So what the understanding that I have with my counterparts at DPP and elsewhere is that, hey, let's sit down, let's get you here involved, let's start attacking this, what's working, what's not. Let's be prepared to go to council and to the ledge if necessary by the end of the year with a comprehensive, update on what we want.
Okay, so by the end of this year,
That's correct.
there should be a package.
Yeah.
I think I think a great point of collaboration is that, if the councils are included, it's something that can also be talked about during our HSAC meetings, right?
Absolutely.
And incorporated in that package. And so just wanted to throw that out there too. So
Great recommendation, and we
Yeah.
invite that.
yeah, and appreciate all the input that stakeholders have been giving from around the community. Were there any other questions from the committee? I know the report is extremely long, and it is the presentation of it, right? So you're saying the final report will be posted as a mayor's message
Yeah,
this
as
week?
soon as we get feedback from the other department directors, which we expect by middle of next week, we're going to get it posted by the 31st of January.
Okay,
And it's a big report. The appendices alone is probably 150 pages. And I
perfect.
think the front end report is about 80, 90. It's not small.
Perfect. As maybe this would be part of my request is assuming that you're doing the meetings with all of the council members and preparations for all the nominations, right, that have come in, maybe having a concise overview of that final plan.
That was the concise overview.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll say digestible.
Yeah, right.
And
We
I
could
know you
try
have a
to-
great
we could
team,
try
so
to do
you guys can, no, but this is I think a great intro to the plan that's coming, in-depth, intro. And like
Thank you,
said,
Housing Chair
concise.
Wire. Appreciate that. Just maybe a final comment to that. I think in the past, our plans have focused more on policy.
Mm.
And we really wanted to pivot this year and focus on execution. What is it that we can do at the margin to help deliver housing? Policy is one thing, execution is another. The city has tremendous ability to be able to be a real active player in this space and to do more and to stimulate more housing. We can do that with land, we can do that with financing, and we can do that by collaborating and bringing folks together. We have a lot of power and authority in that position, very similar to what we're doing around Cooley Station and Evil, and we want to play a more active role.
Yeah, appreciate that sentiment. If there's no other discussion from the committee, thank you again, Director, for your time.
It's a
Appreciate
pleasure.
your
Thank
team.
you, everyone.
Yeah,
Mahalo.
look forward to additional conversations on this. And members, if there's no further discussion, thank you for everyone that came today to the special meeting. We'll be adjourned. Mahalo.